Pedro here to talk about Machine Head Catharsis. The album is out, guys. And I picked it up and I sat down to listen. And my first impression was, holy crap, 15 tracks, 75 minutes? It's long. Guys, it's long. And I think for those of you that have been listening to Machine Head for a very long time, it may be an easier listening experience because you kind of know what to expect from the band and you kind of can set the time aside to sit down and listen to the album. But if they're trying to reach a new audience, that 12, 13 to 18-year-old new audience that has a short attention span, wow, this is a tough sell for that crowd. Like, I don't think I would ever be able to get my kid to sit down and listen to this album for 75 minutes, 15 tracks. I think he would be asking me, are we there yet? After track 2 or 3. So to me, I'm not a big fan of the 15 tracks at all. I think it's too many. The album could have easily been 11, 12 at the most. I'm also not a big fan of 75, 74 minutes. I think it's way too long. It should be, around 50, 45, 40, like around that time. So I'm not a big fan. So my listening experience of this album, it didn't start off on the right foot at the moment I saw these two parameters of the album. Now, a little bit more into the album. The lyrics of this album are extremely political and extremely personally driven aspects and looks at society from the eyes of the songwriter, which I assume is Rob. So this album feels pretty much like the way he views the world around him, he's putting into his music. He's writing it down. Every song, there's a political message, there's a social message. Very strong political and socially driven album. I think it's a reflection of the world he lives in, and it's a way of it's the way he found to get those emotions and those feelings out, is to do it through his music. I think that's the avenue that he found for it. So from song 1 to song 15, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a synopsis of the society from his eyes, a commentary, not always a positive commentary, but very politically driven as well. So from a lyrically perspective, that's the album in a nutshell. Musically, the album has a little bit of everything. There is some songs that sound like old Machine Head from the earlier albums. There's some songs that sound more like recent Machine Head. There's some songs that don't sound like anything Machine Head would ever do. So there's a little bit of everything for everybody, if you will. I don't know how old listeners of Machine Head will take to this album. I had a really hard time placing my feelings on a scale. Like, if you ask me, did you like it? Did you hate it? I mean, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. Like, I'm kind of like in between. I liked some songs, but I didn't like some other songs. I mean, overall, I'm just really having a hard time placing my emotions and my feelings in terms of how I overall feel about the album. Now, I want to give you guys a little bit of a breakdown on a couple of songs, because I think there's some songs in this album that deserve some attention. And I'll start with 2 songs that are almost in the category of a ballad, if you will. And that's Bastards and Behind the Mask. Especially Behind the Mask is very acoustic, has a very acoustic vibe to it. Almost, like I said, almost like a ballad. It's almost like an unplugged version of any song. But this is the actual song. So very different. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, I wasn't expecting 2 of them, because Bastards is always it's also a very slow song, very deeply emotional song. It's like he's talking to his children about the world they live in, and how they can survive in this world, and what kind of world we're living. Not only we're living in, but we are leaving for our kids. So to have that song kind of caught me off guard. Then to have 2 like that, because like Behind the Mask is like super mellow, like super slow song. It really threw me for a loop. And they both kind of come in the middle of the album, so it kind of breaks up the album. You have like heavier songs, then you have 1, then you have 2 heavier songs, then you have Behind the Mask, and then the album gets heavy again after that. So those 2 songs are really hard for me. I preferred Bastards. I thought where the lyrics in Bastards and the place where it was coming from, I can relate to it, having a kid myself. I can totally relate to that song. So from that perspective, I enjoyed it. Behind the Mask, I thought it could have been better if it had a heavier chorus. Like you could go mellowed out throughout the whole song and then throw in a little bit of a heavy chorus, similar to what Pantera did with Cemetery Gates. I thought this song would have been perfect to be almost replica of Cemetery Gates, but no, it was mellowed out pretty much throughout the whole song, with a lot of acoustic guitar in it, and not what I was expecting from Machine Head. I'll say that much. Now, there's 3 songs. I'm not going to talk about Catharsis and Beyond the Pale because I really enjoyed those two. And those two were singles that came out really early before the album came out, so everybody's familiar with those. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about those 2 songs, but I'll tell you guys I really like those 2 songs. But there were 3 songs in this album that made me feel like I was listening to some old Machine Head, and that's Triple Beam, Hope, Begets, Hope, and Psychotic. Those 3 songs have the guitar riffs, the vocals, and the overall sound of old school Machine Head, especially Triple Beam. There's some guitar riffs on Triple Beam that sound like they were completely pulled out of Burn My Eyes. Totally out of Davidian. That song has a lot of guitar riff similarities to Davidian. So those 3 songs were by far my favorite. I like the fact that they were kind of spaced out, so it allowed me to enjoy the record, if you will, a little bit more, because it allowed me to kind of get something that I wanted in between songs that I didn't really want to get. So I like the way they were spaced out. I just wish that there were more of them. I wish the album was shorter and had more songs like those 3. Because those 3 songs, like I said, it's really old school Machine Head with some really cool bass, really cool like just parts where just the bass kicking in and all you hear is the bass just really setting the tempo of the song. Really well done. Super killer guitar riffs that once again throw back to the first 2 albums. Like when I heard those riffs, I was just like, wow, man, why not more of this? Why not more of those 3? And then the lyrics, even though they're very politically driven and they're very emotionally driven, they fit perfectly in those 3 songs, because those songs, there's a lot of anger coming through in those 3 songs. And with those riffs and the bass and the drumming, the super heavy drumming in those 3 songs, you can add that politically driven, you can add that social commentary into your lyrics, and it doesn't feel like the song is about you whining about stuff. It really feels like you wanted to drive a message through. It really feels like you have something to say and you're saying it through your music, and that anger about what's happening to you and then what's happening to the world around you is really coming across in your music. And I think in those 3 songs is where it's done at its best. I mean, one could argue that Bastards really comes from a deep place, also comes across very well, especially, like I said, for me, being a father, I can totally relate about not knowing the world that I'm leaving behind for my son and for his kids. So from more of a father's perspective, I can totally understand that song and I can really dig that song. But these 3 are old school vintage Machine Head, and if I have one thing to say is that I just wish the album was shorter and had more of that and less of everything else. So to me, that's how I feel about Catharsis, and how I feel about this new album from Machine Head. It's not going to be one of those albums that I'm going to be listening to it a lot, but there's definitely some tracks here that I'm going to be pulling out and listen to it on a more frequent basis. Now, what I want to hear from you guys is, have you heard the album, and what do you think about this new Machine Head album? Let me know in the comment section below. I really look forward to reading your comments and replying to them, as always. Take care, guys.